Season 20 is here, and here are the best Pokemon for every role inside of Pokemon Unite. Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw, let's do this thing. Before we hop into our list, I think it's important to mention that Draft and EX Pokemon are changed this season. So, we'll have Draft at 1400 Master Rank instead of 1200. You need all 10 players to be at that rating, and you'll have one EX Pokemon per team, which means they are back, baby, and they will be on this list. We're going to start with our attacker Pokemon. Obviously, strong carry Pokemon that can fill a lot of different spots on the team, usually top or bottom, but some also play in that central area. And your lowest rated player on your team is probably already picking one. But just in case you need to pick an attacker, here are some of the best ones. Cramorant. I'm so excited to put this on the list. This has always been a high skill player choice that's done very, very well. But with recent buffs and with its win rate doing so well, I have to give a nod to Cramorant being one of the better attacker picks in the game. A lot of that is because of Dive. Dive gives you the ability to bounce around the battlefield and get away from some of the more crazy threats that could try to ironically dive in on most attackers. Decidueye, unfortunately, is a sitting duck. Ironically, Cram is not. Cram is able to bounce around with Dive. You can either run Dive Hurricane or the more traditional and better build, Dive Air Slash. You're going to want to play this with 7 black, 6 green for your emblems. Item-wise, there are a few great options. I think Energy Amp and Spoon are kind of a must, and then from there, things like Buddy Barrier, Choice Specs, Shell Bell are all very, very good for Cramorant. As a battle item, I would say Eject Button is an absolute necessity so you can move your Unite move. A lot of what you're going to want to do with Cram, of course, is win lane early. You really don't need Central Area with Cram. However, some players could play it there. You win lane early, you get your level 5, and then you start dominating your opponent as best you can from there. Once you hit your Unite move, I think it's really important to understand how you want to use it. I'm a huge proponent of using Cramorant's Unite not defensively, but offensively. So, when you are winning a fight, when you take down an enemy, jump in, hit them with a dive, boom, right into your Unite move, make a really aggressive play with it. Of course, as long as you're not going to get immediately stomped for doing something like that. But when you're winning, this Unite move is just so devastating to your opponents. It's incredible, and I'm so excited to finally have Cram on a list like this. Our next attacker is Sylveon. Sylveon is nuts. Look, any Eon, like Espeon, Sylveon, Glaceon, like any Eon, any Eevee is kind of insane in this game. Even Inteleon is pretty nuts. Empoleon will be very, very good, and let's face it, Sylvie is running it right now. One of the best things about Sylveon is depending on what you run into on the opponent's side, you could either go Hyper Voice or Mystical Fire. However, the Mystical Fire Draining Kiss build has really secured its spot as one of the most frustrating harasser nightmare Pokemon to deal with in the game for the enemy team. So that's the build I'm going to be talking about. There are a few ways to play this. I like playing Slick Spoon, Focus Band, Resonant Guard, or swapping one of those defensive items out for something like a Muscle Band because you are auto attacking all the time. This is just constant in your opponent's face, constant jumping away from them when they decide they want to get a little too close, invading the enemy central area with it after you have a decent level, and just really being one of the craziest, most menacing, annoying attackers in the game. I really love it. As far as battle items go, a lot of people like things like X Speed, Eject Button, Full Heal, and also even Potion is pretty solid. Sylveon is one of the highest HP attackers in the game, and with already a crazy good sustain set, something like that works pretty dang well. For emblems, I've been running 6 green, 6 white on Sylveon just so I can take advantage of all that extra HP that Sylveon has. Again, you kind of play this as sort of like a harasser, drain tank build, and it's really fun. I mean, it's so mean too. With Sylvie, prioritize hitting your level 4 and then get in the enemy's face and get super, super aggressive. Sylveon, be aggressive. Be aggressive. For my next attacker, I really have 3 that we could talk about here, and I think all of them are very, very good. That's going to be Gardevoir, Delphox, and Chandelure. All of these play as your long-range, sort of artillery attackers that do insane amounts of special attack damage. All of them are great. The Unite move on Gardevoir and Delphox specifically are amazing, but I want to show a little love to our Chandelure players, and let's talk about Shandy as an option this season. Both of Chandelure's move 1 Overheater Flamethrower is very solid. One plays is more like a crazy good secure tool with resets, which is going to be flamethrower, and then overheat does a little bit better kind of burst sustain damage on your opponents. It feels like I get more KOs with overheat, but I get more objectives with flamethrower. So I think either way you want to go is awesome. I'm going to talk to you about overheat and imprison. This is the highest win rate and probably the most popular Chandelure build currently. Although again, really any combination is incredible. I personally love Poltergeist. Setting up the room of furniture for them to run into, I think is amazing, and the slow from that's incredible. However, imprison's hard to beat. You literally shut them down from using moves in a huge area in front of you, and it can set up some huge wins for your team, and it can nullify some Pokemon super hard. I mean, if you don't want things like Tyranitar to cast another Sand Tomb, or you don't want Blaziken to be able to switch its moves, Imprison is awesome. For items, I'm usually going Spoon, Curse Incense, and Choice Specs. Oftentimes I play Chandelure in lane. You can play it in the central area, and it actually does pretty well there because it kind of needs some experience to get online. It really needs that 5. But oftentimes you don't get it with Shandy. I understand there are a lot of Pokemon that want that central area or that jungle, so I go ahead and run it in lane often. Again, Spoon, Curse, Choice Specs, so I can get those better last hits on it. Curse is just solid even if you don't know what's on the opposing side. Better, of course, if you do, but many Pokemon have some sort of even self-healing. That Curse is just kind of a no-brainer on a Pokemon that does such an amazing damage over time and fights at incredible range. For emblems, 7 black, 6 green, easy choice for a mage like this, and in fact all of your mages are going to play something basically like this. One nice thing to notice with overheat is the last hit of it can really be thrown like the longest range sure hit possible, and you can use this to pick up some big time KOs. Stay at good range from your opponents, zone them out with your fire, and then when it is finally time, or when they decide to come in, imprison and get that final hit. Of course, before you throw that final hit, make sure you use your big boosted attack because you are stopped from using autos for a moment after you use overheat. And then of course, with Delphox and Guardy, I think all of these are really strong choices right now. I would just recommend with Del and Guardy, use your Unite moves super aggressively. We've got some strong mages in the game, and I think any of these are a solid pick. I told you we'd be talking about EX Pokemon, so let's talk about it. Mewtwo Y is coming back into the game, and I think it's going to be an absolute force. One of the better EX Pokemon in the game, even though they're all pretty great. I don't think there's a better item setup than Muscle Band, Rapid Fire Scarf, and Slick Spoon with an X attack for the item. I think this is Mewtwo Y. You are a crazy auto attacker, and then when things really get going and you've mega'd and your Rapid Fire Scarf is hitting, you're just doing insane amounts of damage. That's what you want to focus on with Mewtwo Y, is that A button. If your A button's not working, I would highly recommend picking another Pokemon. For emblems, this one's quite unique. This is 7 red, 4 white. This is going to be a build that you run on Mewtwo Y, sometimes Eldegoss, maybe Hoopa sometimes, and then Alola Ninetales, like Aurora Veil build. It's very rare that you run this, but with an auto attacker like this and a special attacker, this is what you want to use so you can just auto attack as quickly as possible. I personally prefer Teleport and Future Sight for the build. Future Sight, so when they move in towards you, you push them back and create insane amounts of damage. Same thing with Teleport. You can use this to push in with the first teleport and then back out with the second one. Mewtwo Y is admittedly pretty basic, and all you really need to worry about with this Pokemon is good spacing. If you have good spacing on your opponents and you just stay out of being, you know, directly in the range where they can dive on you and you can't escape, you're gonna do pretty great with Mewtwo Y. It's kind of the reason it was so dumb for so long. I really am interested to see what it does into a meta with things like Phalanx, Tyranitar, Ceruledge coming out. Like, there's going to be some really interesting stuff it's going to have to deal with. And then, of course, all the other possible EX Pokemon that could be in the game. The next attacker on our list is Miraidon. Yeah, Miraidon's going to be back, so I guess it's time that we talk about it. You could definitely play Miraidon with the classic sort of Charge Beam Thunder, but ever since that has been nerfed, obviously Electro Drift Parabolic Charge has been the moveset for this Pokemon. I have no idea how this is going to perform once it returns to the game, but it has so many amazing tools. It has a crazy strong execute. It has a dash. It's actually really tanky for an attacker. Its Unite move is pretty nuts. There's a lot of good stuff with Miraidon. There are a few ways to play it. I think you can play it with Slick Spoon, like a Curse Incense, and either like Wise Glasses or Choice Specs. You can drop Curse altogether on it and just kind of go Wise Glasses Choice. I know a lot of people with this build have started to become fond of stacking an Eos cookie on it, just trying to get yourself some extra defenses, because you're going to be up in the enemy face a lot if you're playing Electro Drift, and you're able to sustain yourself and survive through a lot of these encounters with that extra HP. And again, you're already actually decently bulky as an attacker. The emblems are going to be 6 green, 7 black, 2 white for a build like this. A little extra HP doesn't hurt anybody. And again, you're going to be up near your opponents a lot. With Miraidon, I think this is going to be a really interesting one when everything is kind of added back to the game. I don't know if this is going to be the EX that a lot of people go with for their teams, but teams are going to have EX Pokemon, and it's going to be fascinating to see what they choose. Miraidon is without question going to be a powerful pick, even though I think it's going to be probably more counterable than some of the stronger things in the meta generally. Now that we've talked about attackers, let's talk about some speedsters, a role that has no EX Pokemon, even though I guess some of these Pokemon could have an EX next to them, and that wouldn't be that crazy. First up is going to be Zoroark, a Pokemon that never does poorly unless the player is not doing too well on it, or if they have a crazy strong counter on the other side. In blind pick, Zoroark can sometimes be even better than draft, I've noticed. Last season, when I was drafting Zoroark, oftentimes, you know, I'd be first picking or something like that, and your opponents know exactly what you're bringing to the table. A lot more games are going to be blind here, giving Zoroark, I think, even more power. And again, if you're great with this Pokemon, it's one of the best in the game. For the build, I like double stacking on this. I like attack weight, Eos Cookie, and usually a weakness policy or even a float stone for that next spot. And then I'm running Shadow Claw and Feint Attack. I think the Night Slash build is very cool, but it was never my favorite way to play this Pokemon. Outside of like the early Night Slash that was just turbo broken, I actually really like Feint Attack. More than any Pokemon, I think you need to spend some time in the practice area, getting to understand this combo between going Feint, Shadow Claw, boom, hitting with that big execute. You need to understand how this works. Please, please, please do this before you try to bring this into ranked, because a bad Zoroark is, yeah, I mean, they're out there, and yeah. For emblems, 6 white, 6 brown, easy choice for really any attack-based Pokemon. Until we get new emblems, you're gonna see a build like this a lot. And then for an item, I think you're gonna wanna run full heal so that you're able to stop yourself from getting stunned in a crazy fight. Eject button, also a decent option. Our next speedster, my personal favorite, Dodrio. Never seems to do poorly. Dodrio even doing well with Potion a lot of the time now lately. So Dodrio's just on a tear. In general, you're going to be running Tri-Attack Jump Kick on this, but there are so many options that you can use. You can play Drill Peck, especially if you see the opposing team isn't going to be able to shut you down as much when you get right next to them. You can play the aggressive, you know, Tri-Attack build if you want to be in the enemy central area, taking farm away from them. And you could also use something like Agility Tri-Attack if you feel like their crowd control is just insanely high and you want that extra healing of CC, extra full heal, essentially, on Dodrio. Dodrio is my favorite. I have a full guide on my channel, so I won't go into crazy detail right here, but I will say Tri-Attack Jump Kick will be the biggest build this season for the bird, and in general, you're going to want to get that level 5 as early as you can, and then once you have it, you are in and out fighting in some crazy ways. In and out, you're getting a burger, baby. For items, I like Attack Weight, Razor Claw, and either Float Stone or Charging Charm for this build. Your item is probably going to be full heal, but again, everyone's playing Potion, and it's honestly working pretty well on Dodrio. Our next speedster is one that seemed to dominate the meta a little while back and has kind of fallen off, but there's no question that Meowscarada is still an absolute force. Whether you're playing Night Slash Trailblaze or you're using the higher win rate and a lot more complex double team flower trick, Meow does very well. I think you don't want to play Night Slash Trailblaze into a lot of enemy compositions that are able to stun you a ton. The nice thing about Flower Trick double team, even if the enemy team is a wall and it's just really hard to do a lot of damage, you can bait out lots of Unite moves, you can set up some crazy moments where you actually finally do decide to move in and surprise them, and then of course your Unite move is unbelievably strong. For items, I've been liking either running something with stacking, so you could run an attack weight weakness policy, you know, Energy Amp or Razor Claw or something like that, or you could run something like Razor Claw, Energy Amplifier, and then an item that you don't need to stack, like Float Stone, Muscle Band, something that gives you a little extra oomph in the attack department and some extra viability in some of your moments, but you don't actually have to stack on it. I think stacking is one of those things where it's either you want to do that or you don't. Yes, you will get extra damage out of of it at the higher end, but sometimes you just have this annoying early game that you have to deal with. So I would really leave that up to personal preference. Battle item has to be an eject button. No question, you reposition your unite move. Some people try Shredinja Doll and things like that. Just use an eject button. It will change the way you win with this Pokemon. You will pick up so many more KOs, and that's the whole point of a speedster, is wiping out enemy Pokemon. Your emblems, 6 white, 6 brown, no surprises here. Finally, we have Leafeon. Leafeon's kind of a weird one because it actually doesn't really crack the top win rate very much as a speedster, and I think it's because of its late game. I think its late game is a little rough compared to some of the other ones. In general, speedsters can have some problems late, right? But Leafeon is no exception. However, I want to talk about a build that I think has been rising in prominence and actually is better than a lot of people thought at first, me included, and that is going to be Solar Blade Aerial Ace. Now, Aerial Ace seems to work really well with Razor Leaf, right? But it actually positions super well with Solar Blade, moves you around the map in some crazy waves, and gives you the opportunity to auto more than you normally do with this build. Either way, I think there are really no bad ways to build Leafeon, and I like that so many more Pokemon in the game are coming in, and I can say that there are no bad ways to build them. There are some that there clearly are, but we're going to talk about Solar Blade Aerial Ace. For items, I like a Float Stone a lot on this Pokemon. Razor Claw, also very good. Energy Amp feels not necessary, but just so amazing on Leafeon. Your Unite move is on a crazy low cooldown, and it's usually how you're able to start sort of a crazy engagement. So you find a moment, you hit with that Solar Blade, then boom, you immediately jump in and delete the enemy carry. So they've got, you know, the enemy Delphox on the other side, and you find a combo, or you notice they're a little low. You start the fight with that big time Unite move, and then you use the rest of the Energy Amp duration to clean up the mess there. I think that's a great way to play it. Also, if you don't like stacking, I think you could run things like Charging Charm and Float Stone on a build like this, but a lot of speedsters, in fact, just a lot of attack-based Pokemon, you're going to stack on. For an item, I personally love an eject button. I don't find as much use for me in a full heal with this build. I like being able to pop in and out of a fight a little bit better and readjust my Solar Blade so I can pick up big KOs. Again, Leafeon probably the lowest one on the list right here, but I just think it's because late game it is maybe a little too squishy sometimes. Early game though, incredibly good. Just so you know, the way you get the quick level 4 on Leafeon is when you're heading into that central area, hold the Xatu until the rest of the Pokemon around there spawn, 9 minutes 45 seconds, then KO it, then take a buff. That's all you need to do, and you hit level 4 right away. You can run right up to top path and you can get yourself a quick KO and then right back through central area. That is the Leafeon tech. Of course, emblems, 6 white, 6 brown. I want to get to our all-rounders, but there are a lot of them that we need to talk about. So let's move on to our supporters, defenders first. Supporters are great. Not having one on a team is so devastating. We're going to talk about a few of the best ones, especially ones that work really well solo. In general, though, there's not a bad supporter in the game. Even Sableye can have some up and down moments because of the Sableye on your team, but Sableye is really good. We're going to start, however, talking about Hoopa. Hoopa's been doing great. Hoopa's been crushing it forever since it's been released, basically, but very recently, Trick getting a buff has changed things for Hoopa. We're going to talk about the Trick Phantom Force build. More and more players are recognizing that if you hit them with the Trick, go through a Phantom Force, they can take that portal through Phantom Force and recover an insane amount of HP, 30% of their max HP. Also, Trick is just doing amazing right now. With really powerful Pokemon in the game, you are able to increase their chances of picking up big time KOs and doing insane damage. You've actually been noticing Trick Hoopa sort of pocketing things in Comfey lately, and I think that's pretty awesome. Mainly because I hate Comfey. For items, I run EXP Share, Muscle Band, Rapid Fire, Scarf. Your autos are just so crazy, and I love going, you know, A-pressing my enemies crazy in lane, and even late game when I use my Unite move and my Rapid Fire Scarf is up. It is very good. And then for emblems, this is going to be another one of those 7 red situations. There are very few Pokemon that can take advantage of this, but an autoer like Hoopa can do it. And then, of course, EXP Share. Farming with Hoopa is an absolute miserable nightmare. You don't want to do it. You want to to empower your allies, and ending the match at level 12 is more than enough to win the whole thing. Battle items, up to you. I personally like eject button on Hoopa. Again, get that EXP share on, use Trick on your ally in lane, and just watch how much you dominate. Our next supporter is Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime has been up and down throughout so many metas, but in general, a high skill Mime crushes it. The items you're going to want to run, in my opinion, are going to be EXP share, Slick Spoon, and then either Resonant Guard or Special Attack Specs. Special Attack Specs are going to give you a lot more damage when it comes to your Confusion. The build is Confusion Barrier, even though Psychic Power Swap has some use, and then even Power Swap and Confusion, but Confusion Barrier just seems like the way to go, especially when there are a lot of Pokemon that want to dive and get towards your team. You can set up many moments where they can't do what they want to do. You can isolate them, hit them with a Confusion into your barrier or into a wall, right into your Unite move, and do insane damage. For an emblem loadout, I'm going to recommend the new one that's recommended by the Math Core. That's the 6 white, 6 blue, 2 green. The reason being, you don't have a lot of base special attack for this Pokemon, so you don't need the extra green as much as you could do with some extra defenses. I have a video on this on my channel as well. It's a really solid new emblem setup. Our next supporter, Eldegood. Eldegood never goes anywhere, man. I like the same build as LD that I do on Hoopa, which is going to be EXP share, Muscle Band, Rapid Fire Scarf. If you don't want to deal with that Rapid Fire Scarf and you just want to swap in something like Resonant Guard, I think that's also very, very solid here. Let's talk about Pollen Puff and Cotton Spore. I think you'd also go Pollen Puff, Cotton Guard. Really the only thing that doesn't crush it right now on Eldegoss is Leaf Tornado. It was nerfed a while back, and since then it just hasn't been the thing. Healing with Pollen Puff, obviously incredible. Also, you're doing damage to your enemies. Cotton Spore, though, it's so nice. Just being able to knock up enemies around you consistently. Also, there's a really cool combo where if you cast Cotton Spore, then you go into your Unite move and land down. You're kind of landing down with both, you know, bits of damage at the same time, which is really, really solid. LD's great. LD's been great. LD is just so good. I love it. I also run 7 red on LD, and again, I normally just go for the full auto attack on this thing. I love being as mean as possible early and just devastating my opponents. For battle items, I think you could run X speed on this. Eject button, also a very good option. Some people I've seen run X attack and things on it. It's pretty dang cheesy, but you absolutely could if you wanted to. Finally, I want to give a shout out to a Pokemon that's more stereotypically looked at as the kind of healer of the team, and that's going to be Blissey. There are a lot of good options, but Blissey is doing great. If you are running a team with something like Mewtwo Y, honestly, you could do Helping Hand Safeguard again. I mean, Y is coming back, but I'm going to talk about the egg build. That's Soft Boiled Egg Bomb. The items that I would like you to run on this are EXP share. I think a necessity on a lot of these special attackers like this. Special attack specs, so your healing is crazy good. And then your third item is really up to you. I know some people like Amp, some people like Buddy Barrier. I've seen some people try Resonant Guards, so you're hitting those Resonant Guards when you're hitting with your Egg Bombs. A lot of great options for Blissey, but in general, you want to focus on getting your healing as strong as possible. That's why I like those special attack specs. As far as your emblems are concerned, I like the new emblem build, the 6 white, 6 blue. I could also see some people wanting to run 7 black, 6 green on this Pokemon, just because you are doing so much healing from the back line, really, that you want to make sure that you are away from your enemies, so you're not worrying as much about sort of the extra defenses or extra HP and things like that. I think that's a reasonable take as well. Blissey is just so good. I mean, I think the big things with this Pokemon are if the enemy has a Hoopa, using Hyperspace Hole, understanding how to bounce them out of that with Egg Bomb, using that to disrupt your opponents, and then at the same time making sure you have a Bliss Assistance for Rayquaza and you use it on your ally. Make sure you use it on your ally carry so that they have a chance of winning that fight. Honestly, I don't think any supporter is bad, and with some of these Pokemon being crazy and not being able to be banned, I think you are going to see some very mean Comfey situations, but I could never in good conscience recommend anyone play Comfey. You're welcome. On to defenders. I have to call out what I think is the best defender in the game, hands down, and that is Trevenant. Trevenant is so nuts, so incredibly powerful. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing gets a nerf sometime soon. This thing is just great. Whether you're running like Curse Pain Split, Curse Horn Leech, or even Wood Hammer in any other build, I just think this is undoubtedly the craziest thing you have to deal with. I do think Woodhammer is probably the strongest option. I think I said option. Strongest option, just given the fact that you were able to reposition your enemies so well and give them massive stuns. However, any way you play Trev is going to work out very well. For a build, I like double stacking, or at least stacking an attack weight, having a weakness policy, and then having a defensive item, something like a focus band or a resonant guard. This thing is just brutal at every point in the game with this, and you really can't go wrong. You really can't. But I know also you could run an EXP share. I do have to say that EXP share is also pretty good on Trevenant, depending on who you are laning with. But there's nothing wrong with kind of making this thing a beast in its own right in most of your games. Your emblem is going to be 6 white, 6 brown. A little different than what we looked at before. This is an emblem setup that lowers the amount of critical hit you get for a little extra HP, but you don't have to worry about critical hits at all with this Pokemon, right? So this is a good setup for a lot of your tankier Pokemon. Battle item, either eject button or X speed, I think is the way to go on Trev. In general, you're in the enemy's face. It's really impossible for them to KO you. You're just an absolute man. I don't know what to say about Trev, except Trev is it right now. The next Pokemon I want to talk about is Umbreon. Now, I recognize that people are going to say that you could be playing Foul Play Wish or even Mean Look Wish Umbreon. I get it. I just want to talk about my favorite build, Snarl and Foul Play. The amount of repositioning, the amount of stuns that you're able to get with this build are insane. Now, if your team has no supporter, I would definitely go Wish so you have some sort of healing, some sort of support for the squad. But if you do have a form of support, Foul Play Snarl is insanely good. Like, you can dive in while you're hitting them with Snarl, stun them, push them back towards your side, use your Unite move, steal their shields. Like, Umbreon is so crazy good. For items, I would recommend going EXP Share, Eos Cookie, Resonant Guard. That is what I think is the strongest. You, of course, could run something like Buddy Barrier instead of Cookie. I know some people like to stack an attack weight. I don't find it that useful to stack an attack weight on this. Like, you do get some extra damage, but your whole job is providing your team insane amounts of support and defense through stunning them. So I would want to be around longer in some of these big fights. For an item, eject button, X speed, the way to go. Emblems, just like we looked at on Trevenant, 6 white, 6 brown with that reduced critical hit. We all know Umbreon's nuts, and I think this is the build, especially if you're playing solo. Our next defender, the Crusty Boy. Crustle is on the list. Crustle's been crushing it for a while. Rock Tomb X Scissor is still definitely the way to go. I think once they removed the damage from X Scissor, they kind of made it apparent that they didn't want you to play this as sort of like the Shell Smash X Scissor Crustle, which I get and is a little sad. You still could run it, but it's definitely Rock Tomb X Scissor's world, and we're all living in it. For items, I would run EXP Share, Resonant Guard, and then your final one would probably be something like a Focus Band, even an attack weight, so you can get a little extra damage on your X Scissor. Not that you absolutely need it. I have run Razor Claw as well before, which is pretty mean, but given that you have a huge stun when you hit with your X Scissor into a wall or into your own Rock Tomb, you probably don't need something like that. Just making this thing super bulky helps the team out a lot. Your item is definitely going to be an eject button. The reason for this is you're able to reposition not only your X Scissor, but you're also able to get your Unite move closer to enemies to get that big stun. I think you kind of need to run an item like this. I guess some people could have a decent time with X speed or even potion, but I think eject is just too good. And emblems, once again, 6 white, 6 brown. There are a few good options for our next defender, or our last defender on the list, but I gotta give it up to Slowbro. The crazier things are in a meta, the more Slowbro brings everything down to a reasonable place. I've actually been enjoying Scald a whole lot. You could do Scald Amnesia. I've been liking Scald Telekinesis, which I know is kind of ridiculous, but it's honestly been really fun. Surf is probably the defensively better choice, but in solo queue, oftentimes, playing Slowbro is sort of like a tank attacking hybrid. I found works pretty well. So if you like Scald, I think it's excellent. Surf, though, probably the better choice. Your items are going to be EXP Share, Resonant Guard, and I personally love Choice Specs. Choice Specs early with this Pokemon just means you get basically every secure with water gun that you possibly could. Even ones that are kind of borderline, you get them with that little extra pop of choice specs. For your battle item, I think eject button so you can position your slow beam is kind of necessary, although some people do like potion if they're running amnesia, because you essentially get a double potion when you use it. For emblems, I've been using that new 6 white, 6 blue, 2 green, and it's been really solid on slow bro. Again, the crazier the things are on the other side, the more important that slow beam is to you. All right, now let's move on to our biggest category, and I'm sure you probably know why. All-rounders. All-rounders, where to begin? Well, we could start with EX Pokemon because Mewtwo, X, and Zacian are here, or we could start with Pokemon that maybe should have an EX next to them, like T-Tar and Phalanx. I don't know where to... Let's just start with Tyranitar. Tyranitar recently received some buffs. It is the most banned Pokemon in our game right now, even though draft is changing soon. It's still going to be an absolute force. People are very scared of it, and it is crushing a lot of games, boasting the second highest win rate in the game currently. Tyranitar is nuts. The build is Sand Tomb, Stone Edge, the two recently buffed moves. With Tyranitar, I think items are honestly all over the place, and I think this is true for so many all-rounders. You can play so many different setups with most of these Pokemon and do really well. Yes, things like stacking are extremely good, but at the same time, you don't need to stack on a lot of these Pokemon to get a ton of value out of them. Tyranitar, I think, is a great example of one that does not need to stack. However, of course, you can, and yes, you will be even more powerful. So a stacking build would look something like attack weight weakness policy, and then your third item either being an Aeos cookie, so you're double stacking, getting extra health, or something like Resonant Guard, Focus Band. I think very, very good options. You, of course, could still run Muscle and Razor also. I do think a lot of items on all-rounders, like, kind of funny enough because they're all-rounders, there are multiple ways to build these Pokemon, and they are more diverse build-wise than a lot of the other roles in the game. Item, I think it's going to be an eject button without question. You can extend the range of your Sand Tomb so you can catch people more easily with that huge stun. Your whole job, become Tyranitar as fast as possible and then start to win the match any way you can. You want to get T-Tar as quick as you can, so that way when you engage, you have an option to actually hurt your enemies, right? So the beginning of your game, you're playing Stardew Valley, you're farming up. Then the end of the game, you just want to make sure you're level 13. Your level 13 on Sand Tomb is huge. Your Sand Tomb lasts basically the entire cooldown you have. So I think that's the play 100%. Get T-Tar early, continue to get experience, and just make sure you're a raid boss by the end of the game. Emblems are going to be 6 white, 6 brown. I like this one with 2 blue with a little extra critical hit. T-Tar is... yeah, it's going to be sad not to ban it anymore. There's another Pokemon that's going to be wild not to be able to ban or pick against too, though, and that is Phalanx. Phalanx has been dominating since it was released, but it's kind of flown under the radar because of Tyranitar, and now we're going to see what happens when you're not able to counterpick this thing. I think the build is going to be Iron Head, No Retreat, even though No Retreat Mega Horn is pretty crazy, and I do like Beat Up and the other move combinations. I don't think there's a bad look on Phalanx, but Iron Head, No Retreat seems to be the best. I like running a attack weight, I like running a Razor Claw, and then your third item, I've been up and down with a lot of different things. I've tried things like Scope Lens, I've tried things like Energy Amp, I've tried Muscle Band, Curse Bangle. I think there are a lot of options for that third slot. Resonant Guard seems pretty good as well. I really think it's up to you on how you like to play this Pokemon for the final slot. Battle item, I greatly prefer an X speed just so I can actually catch some of my enemies with my Unite move. Sometimes you're just not able to. It's like the only kind of underpowered thing in this entire Pokemon's kit. Emblems, of course, 6 brown, 6 white. The big thought with Phalanx is to get a lead early, get some crazy good last hits, which you can get in lane, and then you're going to want to use your combo pretty effectively. It's going to look like Iron Head to position yourself, into a No Retreat to push your opponents, right back into an Iron Head to do a big burst of damage, and then auto attack them down. That is how you're going to take them down with Phalanx. I'm really interested to see what happens once you can't pick against this thing as directly. Next, we have to talk about Blaziken. It's getting a battle pass, which could mean battle pass buffs, but for sure it means we're not going to be seeing any Blaziken nerfs. This thing is dominating in comp play and it's dominating in your regular games. It's nuts. I love it. I love playing it double stacking. I like running attack weight, Aeos cookie, and then a razor claw. Some people would like to put a weakness policy in there, which I do understand, but you're using your moves so often and you're switching between moves that you are always getting procs of your razor claw, keeping your opponents slow so you can hit them with another move. The real thought with this is get your stacks in early, and then once you have your ability to switch moves, be super aggressive. Wait for a nice moment with an overheat, and then once you hit that overheat, you know, they kind of are walking towards your bush, you charge up your overheat, bam, you catch them, move in, hit them with everything you got, blaze kick them into a wall for a big stun, switch your moves up, and then go to town. And the next thing you're going to be looking to do is making sure that you are around objectives with an overheat available for a secure once it gets low. The nice thing is you can fight moving between forms pretty well. Then once the objective starts to get hit, just make sure you have time to switch over to the other moveset if you're not there already and charge up your overheat. Battle item, eject button, no question. You have to be able to change the direction or increase the range of your overheat for big secures on KOs and wild Pokemon. Emblems, of course, 6 white, 6 brown with the 2 blue. This is the setup I like most. You're going to see a lot of this here in the all-rounder category. Another all-rounder that's just dummy good is Gyarados. It evolves so fast now. Even though its Unite move got a little bit of a nerf, there really isn't much that's changed with this thing to not make it an absolute beast. Stacking, I think, is very good on it. I think an Energy Amp is very good on it. And then as far as your moves are concerned, I should get to moves before items. Dragon Breath Bounce seems to be the way to go, especially given that there are times where you need to get away from all of the crazy amount of crowd control on the enemy team, and Bounce makes you unstoppable. However, if there are a lot of squishy Pokemon on the enemy team and not a lot of crowd control, Waterfall is extremely good. You chase so well, the shield is big, and the damage is very solid. Okay, now, Jake, on to items. Attack weight, I think, is kind of a must on this Pokemon. I like attack weight amp Razor Claw, but I could definitely see people wanting to run Resonant Guard, people wanting to double stack, people wanting to have a weakness policy. I think there are a lot of good options for sort of those third slots. Attack weight and amp for me are kind of musts because you just do so much with this Pokemon and you do so much with its Unite move. And as far as your emblems, once again, 6 white, 6 brown. Focus on quickly becoming Gyarados, making sure you're using your moves on enemy Pokemon as well as wild Pokemon. And of course, if you can get an assist or a KO early, the game is yours. Now let's talk about some of our EX Pokemon. Mewtwo X is coming back to the game, and I do think it's probably the least exciting EX Pokemon, probably the weakest, but I can't say for sure. I still think it's nuts. The interesting thing about this is you can play this in so many different ways. You can play it with a weakness policy, Resonant Guard, Focus Band. You can play it with a curse item. You can stack on it. You can play this with like EXP share. You can play it almost as like a support tank. I don't really know what to recommend you play on Mewtwo X. Just the fact is you can play it like kind of however you like, dealer's choice. Like one of the most anything goes Pokemon in the game. Of course, 6 brown, 6 white on the emblems. I personally really like Psystrike Recover or Future Sight Recover on Mewtwo. I do think Recover is kind of the way to go with Mewtwo X. With Mewtwo Y, I think it's definitely Teleport, but with Mewtwo X, just being able to charge your Mega Gauge with it essentially, and at the same time giving you this like crazy shield. Yeah, I think Recover is absolutely the way to go. Battle item, I like running things like X Speed, and I also like running Potion. The eject button also is pretty good on Mewtwo. I don't have a lot to say about Mewtwo. It's Mewtwo, and I do think it coming back to ranked is going to be very interesting. However, there are a lot of Pokemon I'd like to play more than Mewtwo or have on my team more than Mewtwo X. The next one, actually, I would like a lot more, and that's Zacian. With Zacian, the build is Sacred Sword Agility. You're going to want to run a Muscle Band, probably a Rapid Fire Scarf, but also possibly a Razor Claw for the item set. And then, of course, you don't get a third item, so it's got your Rusted Sword. So it's either Muscle Rapid or Muscle Razor, in my opinion. Sacred Sword Agility is the moveset. I really don't think you should be playing much else at all. Maybe Sacred Sword Play Rough, but I just think there's really one Zacian build. There's always been one Zacian build. It is the way to play with this mean Pokemon. You gotta hit him with that big time Sacred Sword and then just auto him down. That's your whole job. Make sure you have at least 8 Eos energy so you can charge up an enhanced Sacred Sword, get the Sacred Sword on there, hit them with the stun, take their defenses, and just rip them apart. I do think Zacian is... It's Zacian and probably Mewtwo Y. I don't know, all the EX are so good. I think Zacian is actually crazy good. Again, not a lot to say about it. We've seen Zacian for a long time. I don't know how it's going to perform into things like Phalanx, into things like Tyranitar, Blaziken. We'll just have to see. But I do think Zacian is better than Mewtwo X. And it might be... probably because it's the oldest, the most forgotten EX Pokemon that you will see on a team. And I want to give a couple quick final shoutouts in the all-rounder category. There are just so many good ones. I think Mimikyu and Metagross are both insane right now. I don't think there are too many horrible all-rounders in general. Dragonite with Hyper Beam is also crazy good right now. There are just too many all-rounders to list, so these are the ones I went with. I would love to hear from you in the comments. What Pokemon do you think I didn't talk about that I should have? There are a few that did not make my, they made my list, but it's gonna make the video 8 hours long, and then all of a sudden I'm talking about every Pokemon in the game, right? Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. I love you. I'll see you all very soon. We did it.